Overwatch is one of the best games I've ever played. The moment-to-moment action, flexibility, and lashings of style in this team-based hero shooter all combine to make it a special experience. On Nintendo Switch, however, that exhilarating gameplay is too often robbed of its true greatness because of a number of technical and control issues that make playing on this hybrid handheld a tough place to play. It's still fun, but if you're coming from another platform, it's hard to get used to. Concessions have evidently been made to bring Overwatch to the Switch, and they're clear from the get-go. When docked, the game outputs at 900p, and it definitely shows when put side by side with existing versions. Textures aren't nearly as detailed, clothing and hair look flat and solid, text is slightly blurry, and without its crisp edges, the overall image seems washed out. While looks aren't everything, the fact that distant enemies can often appear as a fuzzy silhouette can actually have an adverse effect on the way you play. Trying to snipe as Hanzo can be difficult when it feels like he's in need of a trip to the opticians. It's by no means a bad-looking game though, and when played in handheld mode, a lot of those issues are mitigated. Overwatch's strong art direction shines through and still makes it one of the best looking games on the Switch, outside of Nintendo's own games. From a visual standpoint, playing handheld is the best way to enjoy Overwatch on Switch, but that's totally at odds with the best way to play from a control perspective. The Switch's Joy-Cons, whether attached or in the grip, just don't allow for the level of accuracy required for a high-speed shooter like Overwatch. Their analog sticks often feel stiff and can result in jerky movements while aiming, rather than smooth tracking while aiming down sights. Characters such as McCree and Ashe in particular are difficult to use as a result, with headshots becoming much more of a challenge to execute. Melee-based heroes such as Reinhardt or Brigitte are easier to use as they don't require anywhere near the same level of accuracy. It's pretty terrible that a good number of heroes are a lot less fun to play though, and that leads to a level of roster imbalance that's not often associated with Overwatch. Playing with a Pro controller solves many of these issues. Its ergonomic design feels much more natural for a shooter. Using a controller that works similarly to what I'm used to on home console, every character on the roster feels like a viable option again. But that kind of makes the issue worse, because the playing field is made so imbalanced in favour of people who paid for an extra peripheral. Perhaps the biggest addition accompanying Overwatch's move to Switch is the incorporation of motion controls. When booting up for the first time, these gyroscopic tools are automatically turned on, which can be quite jarring at first. Testing them while sniping with Widowmaker quickly reveals a fundamental problem. They simply don't have the level of sensitivity needed to rely on them solely for aiming. After several attempts, you'll begin to hit a sweet spot, using the right stick to aim before using the motion controls to fine-tune it, and this produces slightly better results, but it's still not particularly satisfying. This feels nowhere near as responsive or smooth as micro-adjusting Link's bow in Breath of the Wild. At best, motion controls are a novelty, and at worst, they're a hindrance. On the more positive side, Overwatch on the Switch does come with its own native voice chat, a big plus when considering the majority of Switch games require an entirely separate app to do the same thing. But there are a number of other technical issues that trip up the minute-to-minute enjoyment. Framerate is capped at 30 frames per second, which instantly feels at odds with the fluid nature of Overwatch on all other platforms. Worse, it's not locked at 30 and dips below that when a lot is taking place on screen, not an uncommon event in this game. On top of that, character models often take a few seconds to load in when spawning or changing hero, and play of the game highlights can sometimes appear with invisible characters. Like other versions of Overwatch, you also need to have an internet connection to even get into the game, which makes playing while you're out and about a virtual impossibility. This was to be expected, but it would have been nice to see at least the training modes available while offline for the sake of portability. And yet, despite all of these technical issues being noticeable, they're almost never game-breaking, and can't kill the fun during the heat of a thrilling point capture or overtime scramble. Even when it's not at its best, Overwatch is still fundamentally fun, and it's the best shooter on Switch. Very few other games anywhere offer the same level of excitement on a game-to-game basis as this. Overwatch on Switch is a less than optimal way to play one of the most satisfying online games ever made, but it's still one of the best around. Technical issues are plenty, and in most cases noticeable, but never truly ruin the fun or make it truly unplayable. If you already play Overwatch consistently on another console, then there are very few reasons to own it on Switch, and in fact, it may be extremely frustrating to go back and forth between them. But if this is your introduction to the beautifully crafted world of Overwatch, then it still offers more fun than most. If you want to see more of what Overwatch looks like on Switch, be sure to check out our 8 minutes of gameplay.